I've bought this exact same thing for 10 people that I know. I get on calls, people like, your video quality is amazing. What's your webcam? I was like, it's my phone. They're like, but how is it holding on to your monitor? And I was like, well, I have this thing. What advice would you have for them in today's day and age where omnichannel is, one of those new buzzwords?
Don't try to be everywhere all at once. Start with a pilot, have a plan, but kind of phase it and then gradually scale as it starts to show you results.
First-party data is really important, but it can be expensive and timely to accumulate.
I would say to not get lost by buzzwords or the flashy solutions. I always say to my team, take a pen and paper.
How about AI behind the scenes?
Looking at your data and assessing it for the readiness for agentic commerce, that part I think is really important.
Welcome back to another episode of the Brilliant Commerce Podcast, where I get a chance to sit down with some of the brightest minds in commerce behind what I like to call iconic or soon to be iconic brands. And today we're getting a chance to meet with someone who is truly at one of those iconic brands. So joining me today is Jyoti Malik, who is the Senior Director of E-commerce at Belkin. I'm actually holding on to one of my favorite things from Belkin right now, and it's this. It's a magnetized device that I put on the back of my iPhone. Whenever I'm traveling, I use my iPhone as my webcam. And I think it is absolutely ingenious. And I've been a customer of Belkin for at least 10 or 15 years. So I'm really excited that you agreed to join me here today and, excited to learn more about your role and your background and some of what you and the team are working on at Belkin today. So Jyoti, thank you for joining me.
Absolutely. Happy to be here. And thanks for having me.
Before we get into some of these hard-hitting questions, where am I finding you today?
I am based in Seattle.
Seattle. Awesome. All right. How's the weather today? Is it what everyone says about Seattle? Is it raining all the time?
Oh, not all the time. It rains a fair bit and it has its own charm, I think. At least now I feel that way after 10 years of being here. It's quite pleasant. Yeah.
Yeah. So 10 years, you've had a really interesting career, like where you've been in a number of like really impressive brands. Tell me a little bit about like your trajectory and what led you to Belkin.
Sure. Yeah. So I started my career in retail, like branded retail product management. So I really loved that part. And then I post MBA around the time online commerce was getting bigger. And I was very curious about it, and that seemed like the next place to go. And so I've been in e-commerce since then. First in consulting for a couple of years, omnichannel e-commerce consulting for retail consumer goods clients. Everyone was trying to figure out what their 5-year roadmap, 3-year roadmap should be. A lot of analytics related work because data and e-com kind of go hand in hand. And then I moved to industry, starting with Amazon. So in the channel, I spent some time and I've been on the brand side, primarily consumer electronics for the last couple of years, commercially oriented roles, very close to e-commerce. And what brought me to Belkin was this opportunity to work on our North America digital business, has the marketplaces, direct to consumer, as well as the emerging channels. And that's really exciting because there is so much going on in e-commerce. Things are evolving fast. Like last year, we were not talking about agentic commerce. Now we all are talking about agentic commerce. So yeah. So that's it's a really interesting space to be in. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, is there one thing in particular that drew you to commerce? And I think the background in product management is really fascinating. Obviously, Amazon's an incredible school, but why e-commerce? Isn't, when I speak to a lot of people in technology, they're like, e-commerce is a solved problem. Like there's nothing to innovate there. We're in it, so I don't believe that to be true. But I'm curious, like what drew you into commerce?
What drew me into it and what has kept me in it is, in e-commerce, it's all aspects of running a business. You have to focus on the P&L. You have to look near term, long term, all of those things. But it's really, I don't think it's been solved yet. I think people are still trying to figure it out and it's evolving so fast. And I think that's kept me interested. Like commerce is not just restricted to a store, e-com, or a website. It's anywhere commerce at this point, and that's the interesting piece. So you're going where the consumer is going, and I don't know if the Maybe there are people who think that it has all been solved and figured out. I certainly don't think so. And it's kept me interested.
I am 100% with you. It's like you and I have been in the same conversations, even though we're meeting today for the first time. I love to say that commerce is everywhere. I love to say, like, you've got to go and have conversations with where your customers actually are. And that is not a solved problem. And I do believe that that is part of the foundation of what makes an iconic brand. Those brands that are willing to go and create those experiences with their customers where they are. I do think that there was a lot of, I mean, if you remember the early days of commerce, there was a bunch of friction. You remember filling out those checkout forms. Now there's less and less friction, but it's harder and harder to create those conversations or to find those customers or to cut through the noise. And we'll get to AI eventually. It's inevitable that we don't talk about that. But for the maybe one person who doesn't know Belkin that's going to be listening to this, talk to me a little bit about the brand and some of the products, like what's given Belkin the staying power that it's had over its incredible history.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I mean, we've been around for 40 plus years, a brand that's born in California. The team is still there. It's a brand that, people still hold very close. It's part of the everyday life in terms of product categories. The products touch, from wireless accessories to like connectivity solutions, B2B oriented solutions. And then we have gone into new categories like gaming and entertainment and audio. So we have a very wide category set, and the brand really stands for, quality. And the other thing that we really practice, what we preach, is sustainability in our product and how we go to market. So I think, that has given the brand its staying power, just being true to the vision, just being true to the commitment to adhere to quality. And then, of course, trying to be good for the planet.
I mean, I absolutely love that. Again, like more ingredients for what it means to be iconic. It's like having these brand pillars, and then fundamentally, you're still creating a physical product, and like it's impossible to escape. And again, I'm going to go back to the device, I would say, that I'm holding on now. I've bought this exact same thing for 10 people that I know, because when I first got it, I was like, I get on calls, people like, your video quality is amazing. What's your webcam? And I was like, it's my phone. They're like, but how is it holding on to your monitor? And I was like, well, I have this thing. It's so simple, but it's so beautifully designed and it feels really good. It's not, and I'm proud to buy it for folks. And I think that that's nice when you discover that brand and you have that relationship. And I didn't need to see the reviews. I was like, oh, that's a Belkin device. That's going to be high quality. So yeah, congrats on that product. I'm a big believer in it. I want to come back to one of the things that I think is sort of interesting about your career, you're obviously working at a brand now, but you were working at a really important channel before in Amazon, and you used one of my favorite buzzwords, which is omnichannel. How much of your job is helping the team understand how best to show up in those channels, or channel diversity or channel mix? Like that can be an opportunity and a challenge. And as I talk to founders that got started exclusively in D2C and that are thinking about either physical retail or expanding into channels like Amazon, like what advice would you have for them in today's day and age where omnichannel is, one of those new buzzwords?
Yeah, and just to clarify, you're talking about sort of digital native founders or leaders now expanding into broader. Yeah. I think I would say it's a reverse of the same thing that we have been doing. A lot of the brands, we originated in physical retail, and e-commerce was sort of an add-on and expanded from there. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done for the organization to start thinking differently, right? Not a digital first thinker, but then you have to start thinking that. Now, if you're going the other way, some of the same things apply, right? So one, it's really about driving a lot of education and connecting the dots for your stakeholders. And, you have to start with maybe a shared opportunity or a pain point that the business needs solving, right? For example, we need to grow market share. How do we grow market share? We have to where the consumer is. Where is the consumer? Either, if you are a digital native brand, then you know that 80% of retail is still physical retail, right? So now you have a shared opportunity, something that you can all align towards. Now, this also shows up in the financials, right? Maybe there are brands that are expanding. You have an opportunity that you can grow. So you're seeing that. And you know that you need a new approach. The approach you may have had as a DTC only brand is not going to necessarily just translate as is if you're trying to go omnichannel. There's a lot of things to be considered, right? And omnichannel, unless you're opening up your own stores, I'm assuming it means that you're going through, other retailers and, having your presence there. So start with a pilot. That would be the one way to go, right? Don't try to be everywhere all at once. Start with a pilot, have a plan, but kind of phase it and then gradually scale as it starts to show you results. And there's many other things need to happen. Also, you have to bring the team together. The incentives have to be aligned. You have to have team structures that enable success. If you don't have the skill set, you have to build for that skill set or you have to hire for that. Literacy is important too. Going from physical retail to digital and digital to physical, you really have to know the landscape too. So I think that's the important piece, that really start with what's the shared pain point or the shared opportunity. What does that mean for us as a brand? What does our path look like? What learning we can take from what everybody else is doing? And how do we start? And start in a phased, structured, smaller manner, learn, and then go from there.
Yeah. I mean, I think that phased approach is really, really smart. It's sort of like, maybe that speaks to your product management roots. How can I create the business case and ultimately test into it? Because these are some big bets, and sometimes like the amount of time, I think we underestimate how hard it is to establish a relationship with, say, a Target or selling into Amazon, or going the other way around, being like, I started in physical retail and now I need to create this online experience. It's not as easy as, creating a template and launching a website and then suddenly they're going to come. There's, I love the sort of thinking of you got to hire into it and you sort of have to test into that.
Yeah, absolutely.
As we fast forward or we think ahead, I can't believe we're in the fourth quarter of 2025. Let's zip ahead to 2026. As far as you're concerned, what's one thing that needs to change for commerce leaders as we move from 25 to 26?
I think one thing that I do hope we all leave behind, and I say that every year, is that, think about, if you're thinking about digital commerce, that just think that, digital commerce is just retail, but online, right? And you just said it. It's not as simple as listing the SKUs on a site and then running some ads, having some operational setup, and then run the same playbook over and over and over and take it slow. I mean, that's been the physical retail playbook. It's been established over decades. You have the four walls of a retail store. You have the planogram. It's all been very the formula has worked and it hasn't really shifted too much.
Yeah.
Now with digital commerce, it's completely changed the game. We just talked about it. You have commerce happening through sites and all of that, but it's happening through social media, shoppable ads, now AI chat platforms, etc. Digital commerce is not a bolt-on to the existing retail operating model. And that thinking, I think we have to leave behind. We have to look at commerce the way it's being done today and then assess our setup, assess our team, our skill set, everything for what it means to be in this space today and how to be successful versus kind of still anchored on to what our past operating model has been and thinking that just making some adjustments on the peripheries is going to help us be successful in e-commerce or the way commerce is happening today, which is anywhere commerce.
Anywhere commerce. I like anywhere commerce, actually. I think I might steal that, although now I'm on the record as saying I'm going to steal it. One of the things I like to ask people is are we ready to drop the E from commerce? Isn't it just commerce? Isn't it are we not mature enough now in that commerce happens where our customers are and where they're interfacing with our brand, whether that's in the four walls of retail or it's online, either on our owned channels or channels where, we've chosen to show up. So Is 2026 the year where we shift from like e-commerce to an agentic commerce and physical retail commerce to just commerce anywhere?
I think
Is
so.
that fair to say?
Yeah, I think that time is approaching. I mean, 15 years ago, I think e-commerce was sort of starting to take shape and people needed to give it a definition. And there were a bunch of
Yeah.
buzzwords that went around, right? Like omnichannel and phygital and this and that. So e-commerce was a way for people to distinguish what we were talking about and what sort of, what was this, the whole operating model that we needed to build towards. But now it's everywhere. Yeah, like people are browsing and checking out at the same time. The funnel has really been collapsing. So yeah, it's we should just think of it as commerce now. I mean, people are in store and they can shop out online, right?
Yeah, it's true.
While being in the store. So yeah, I think, and that's the piece that instead of thinking about, oh, I have this part, which is my physical retail, and I have to add e-commerce to it, and then I have to add social to it, and then I have to add something else to it, just think about commerce. You have to be in front of the consumers where they are. How do you engage with them? And how do you kind of make that transaction and then retain that relationship? What you can learn about the consumers? How do you then, stay with them through the life cycle? I think all of that thinking has to come together. So yeah, it's not in versus physical anymore. It's just commerce.
Okay. I love that as a segue, the learning and relationships. To me, when I think about one of the great things about commerce moving online is our ability as retailers or as brands to accumulate first-party data on our customers. And so as someone who is a leader at an omnichannel brand, you have access to an awful lot of first-party data. You're getting access to data that is not first-party. How important is first-party data at Belkin? How do you think about it? What are some metrics that really matter? Let's dive into first-party data as a conversation, because I think it can bring us back to like how the funnel is collapsing and how you're adjusting as a marketer and as a digital commerce leader in that regard.
Absolutely. I think data, first-party data is a competitive advantage. It can be a big advantage. What really matters, and this is where you have to really look at where you are in the, on the maturity scale. The quality of it matters. The quantity of it matters too. And the utility is very context dependent, right? And I also will go a step forward and say first-party data is an advantage, or any data rather, if you actually act on it in a way that's friendly and meaningful for your customers and your business, right? So one thing we talk about that, to be successful and have a meaningful relationship with the customer, especially when there's so much noise, there's so much choices, and there is limited attention. You have to be relevant to the customer. You have to approach things from a customer point of view and really remove the friction from the journey, right? First-party data ties well with that need in terms of able to support that. You have granular data about the customer, their every interaction with the brand in your own channels. So that can really help with understanding how they're engaging, where they are getting stuck, how to resolve that. And then things like, for example, lifecycle marketing. You can engage with them directly. You can engage with them one-on-one and in a setting where you're not competing for attention. You're not there with 20 other brands. If they clicked on your email, you got them to click, then they are looking at your email for that, 5 seconds, 10 seconds. And then then you get them to notice and receive that invite to engage, then you're free to engage with them and learn from that interaction, right? And then continuously use this data to improve things like your operations, like customer service data is a rich source of insights. Helps you understand what the customer's pain points are, why. And usually you get to learn a lot about solving for things that help you keep the customer. Like customer acquisition is not cheap, but continuously having to acquire customers, losing them, and then trying to acquire new customers, like it's not good for the brand or the business. So really using that post-purchase data, that interaction is very helpful as well. So, and then also like you can engage with the customers very creatively too. I think first-party data, you know enough about them that you can be really relevant with them. Like for example, if you have consumers that are local to a specific area, you can invite them to community building efforts. Just making up an example. Like you can create those moments of delights for them. So that's just operating within that. And then assuming you have sufficient quantity of good first party data to have some statistically significant insights that you can take to other channels. You can take these insights and apply appropriately to other channels, how you engage with the consumers, and even in the channels that are non-owned by you, like, for example, third-party retail. So, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I wish that more people offered up the advice of first-party data is really important, but it can be expensive and timely to accumulate. And before you as a brand make that investment, how do you give yourself an honest assessment as to where you are on the maturity curve? Number one, even like, how do you define what that is? But then number two, assuming you can accumulate like the right amount of first party data, do you have the team? Have you hired the right people to be able to use that data? Because otherwise, maybe it's not the right thing for you to invest in. And I remember like the early days of e-commerce, and I've been on the record saying this in the past, I used to talk to other leaders and they would say, like, do you know how much data I have in my data warehouse? And I'd be like, I don't know, how much? And it was like, do you have a petabyte yet? I was like, well, what are you doing with it? They're like, well, nothing, but we're storing it. And I was like, well, that seems risky to me.
1 million emails. Sure.
Yeah, you're like, okay. Is anyone opening your email? Are you sending them the relevant content? And so I think that that's really smart. And almost like having a checklist as you're getting started in first party data, because again, as an industry, we're sort of told like first party data. I think that's right if you have a strategy for it.
Yeah,
can you leverage it? Can you leverage it the right way? And there have been, and I tried to talk about this somewhat authentically, like there's been such a proliferation of point solutions that hoover up some of their own first party data. And you're like, but wait a sec, like I want that too. And so you have a really, I think, holistic approach or point of view on first party data. And so maybe how have you developed that over time? Like what lessons have you, if there's one lesson that you could leave people with that has been like really practical that you would take with you to your next company and the company after that as it relates to first party data for maybe someone that's a bit earlier on the maturity curve, like what might that be? This might be a hard question.
No, I think, and I've dealt with that. I think if specifically speaking to a company that's just starting out and it's kind of early on in the maturity, I would say to not get lost by the buzzwords or the flashy solutions, or like, you start maybe searching and you have like hundreds options and so many point of views to think about. So don't get overwhelmed. I think it's important. I always say to my team, take a pen and paper, right?
Yeah.
And it's the analogy for sit down. What do you want to do with it? And then think at least like 2-year time frame where your business is going to go. And then how your first party data strategy is going to enable where you're trying to go. It all has to be in sync. Otherwise, you'll just buy a solution here, like maybe an email solution here, and then some sort of a customer like CDP or something. But then you haven't really answered a business question. You haven't tied your business need to how this data is going to support you. So I think it's very important to spend a good amount of time doing that, pressure test it a little bit, and then start small instead of buying everything all at once. Start building more like what's going to be the core of this.
Yeah.
Right? And then as you are evaluating the different solutions that bring in, different sources of data, how is it going to work together? That's very important, because in the long run, what you don't want is to also accumulate a lot of like tech debt along the way, and then spending time like ripping solutions off because the new thing doesn't talk to the old thing. And so, it's really important to have that view and spend a lot of time doing that before starting to go out and bring solutions and, put them in place, because these are, not long term, but these are commitments that for some that you have to see.
And they take time to manage. And like sometimes you make the investment in them and you sort of feel obligated to try to make it work. And I think having that, starting it at that place of like, what is the problem that we are trying to solve? Like, what is the core, as opposed to, this is maybe part of the problem with believing that commerce is a solved problem, is you have a checklist. Like I know I need to buy this, and this. And you're like, but what problem is that solving for you? And how are you going to use that data? So I like that as just stop for a sec, be really thoughtful, take out your pen, get a piece of paper, write it down. And then you can start thinking about what are the solutions that you might need, because the solution might already be in the organization. Or you might be a year early where you don't need that solution and it's just going to be a distraction.
Exactly. And like have your list of those 20 things you want to know about the customer that you think you will once you have all the data. And then out of those 20 things, then you can start prioritizing. And then you start figuring out what's the most important question and what question can be answered sooner than, what has to be.
Use cases.
Yeah.
What use cases are we trying to get to? At the risk of not taking the advice you just gave us and focusing on the flashy thing, I'm curious to get your point of view on agents as customers. I just got off a call where someone was sort of saying, we've abandoned our SEO strategy and we're only thinking about GEO. And I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. But it is true that more and more agents are going to be shopping our websites and trying to decide if our products are relevant. So do you have a formed point of view on this yet? Do you think about agents as customers? Am I thinking about that the right way? Is there another way that you're thinking about making sure that if someone is searching on ChatGPT or Perplexity, that Belkin is showing up as a relevant part of that conversation?
Yeah. So to answer your question, I don't have a formed point of view. What I have is a forming point of view because I'm still learning.
That's fair.
I'm like, what is everybody saying? Okay, how much is, what's the signal versus noise in all of this? So I think there's two things to this. One is customers, and that is, I think we've all established, customers are using these platforms, these chatbots to search and ask questions, right? It's not a fad. It's not something that's happening only to a small segment of customers. So yes, we need to be showing up, and that's something we are thinking about, right? Like, how do we show up? Where are these, these chatbots sourcing their data from? Like, Reddit is coming up. Is like Reddit
always comes up.
Popularity, exactly. So really, and that I don't think you can miss the boat on that one because it's already happening. And those who had already like good brand signals, like trusted signals and a lot of credible content are going to have an advantage, like a first mover advantage. But if you don't have that, then you really have to build towards it. Now, the other piece, the other aspect is when the agents start shopping, like when the customer is somewhat removed from the equation, right? So you have the human customers and then you have the agent customers. I think you will always have human customers, right?
I sure hope so.
I hope so too. Exactly. I want to be a world where
I'm a romantic. I love being a consumer. I don't want that to go away.
And then a subset of the purchases, transactions, depending on the kind of product, like what industry you are in, right? Is it a very involved purchase? Is it just like essential, a commodity or something? You will have to cater to those as well. So I don't know. And I would say, I don't think that time has come yet where you can abandon talking to a human customer and just straight cater to the agents. I think humans are always going to be involved, and we hope they are. So it's about, one, humans are using these AI chatbots and these platforms to engage and research and learn and shop directly, as we, just started seeing a couple weeks ago. You have to be on that bus. Completely abandoning that aspect and solely catering, I think that's ways out. Let's see how that evolves, to what degree it evolves. And it's about being ready versus just abandoning whatever you were doing and what the core of your business is to spend time thinking about that. I would probably spend 5% of my time thinking about that particular thing right now. 95%.
Yeah, I think it's about being ready. Yeah. How do you get ready, or what advice would you have for someone to get ready from the point of view of first-party data?
First-party data to
So as soon as the agents are now shopping on your behalf, like how does that change the approach that you would normally take to first party data, or is it too soon to say what first party data we're going to be able to get back?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question. I would say, I don't know if, again, this is one that it's probably, I'm in the very early stages of even thinking about it. But just to kind of share some of those early thoughts, I think when you take a human out of the equation, you have to then I would say you have to reduce the friction even more. So now you have to be very, very thoughtful, right? A human can step away from the computer, maybe call or maybe do some research or speak to a friend or whatever and make a decision, right?
Yep.
Or come back to your site maybe 2 days later. Like you have a different kind of an engagement. When it's an AI agent, you really have to, have quality data, know how that AI agent is going to rank your product, amongst all the choices available to them, how they are going to be understanding and learning about your product. And that's the GEO part, right? Because you have to provide enough context, etc. So looking at your data and assessing it for the readiness for agentic commerce, that part I think is really important. And actually we are kind of embarking on that journey to do that. What exactly will need to happen, how exactly all your data will have to be evolved. And then the question you called out just now, which is a very important question and very interested, what kind of data you'll get back?
Yeah, that, I know. I'm worried.
I haven't answered yet. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, right now, the optimist to me is like, well, I'm going to get a lot of first party data back. It's really, they're just placing the order on behalf of the customer on my channel. But then I think, worst case scenario can be like, you're operating on a channel that's going to obfuscate that from you. And then my ability to, like, I think about the use case where, Jyoti, I know you just had this agent place this order on your behalf, but I'm really excited that you're my customer. I have your email address. I want to send you some sort of lifecycle email that says, what do you think about the product? And that's different. We have to think about that differently as marketers. But if that information, if all I can do is drop ship the order to you and I can't actually have you as my customer, I start to be less optimistic about that as a channel. But I hope that it's something like that's a new way for some people to shop for certain things. And it's just about removing more friction from the checkout process, if you will, by saving a click. But I otherwise still, as a brand, I'm going to have an opportunity to interface with the customer. I hope that's what it is. But I'm prepared for everything and anything. And I am also hearing some people who are worried about the economics of the channel. We are increasingly operating in a world where we're under margin pressure and, there's not, more margin for you and payment processing for you and payment processing for you. At a certain point, we can't keep passing these costs along to the consumer. So I am cautiously optimistic about where we go here.
Yeah, it's funny you talked about economics, because I think ads are coming.
Yeah. The ads are coming. Yeah. I mean, payment processing is there, payment processing on top of payment processing. And sure, if you're delivering the customer and you're removing the friction, I'm willing as a brand, I'm willing to pay for that. But I think there's reasonable limits. And I think, as you think about your, going back to even being omnichannel and thinking about the channels and thinking about having visibility into channel profitability and the levers that you have. I mean, sometimes you just have to go where your customers are, but other times you do have influence over where you want your customers to be. And I think having that point of view is really important.
Yes, you'll have to get very, very clear on that. And that's what, again, will keep you grounded. And that's where, you'll get your success, because otherwise you're continuously kind of getting swayed. Like I was reading this very interesting article about, what agentic commerce will mean for shopping, not what AI will mean for shopping and all of that. And there was this conversation about how Costco is going to be immune to all this. People love their Costco membership. People will go and shop at Costco.
Yeah.
Right? So things like that. Like there is a very loyal base for, say, Trader Joe's. I mean, it's grocery, super competitive.
Yeah.
But they have established their identity and they have a customer and that, the customer base that resonates with that identity. And so you will have to have that kind of a pull. You'll have to think about ways of creating pull and getting customers to interact with you where it works for you as a brand as well versus, continuously just bleeding margin. Like you said, we can't always keep passing on the cost to the customer.
No, definitely not. I mean, it's still so important, I think. And I really appreciated something you said maybe 15 minutes ago around the hidden cost that what no one thinks about of acquiring a customer and then losing the customer and having to reacquire them. Like that doesn't work. And I think the way that we protect against that is by being, having a good relationship with that customer. We have to be really thoughtful about that. I'm going to run us out of time here, and like we could spend the next hour talking about these things.
Sure.
But I am curious if I can sneak one other question in here. Like, so we've talked about agentic commerce for better or worse. How about AI behind the scenes for you and the team? Is there a tool or tools that the team are using to maybe unlock some efficiencies? Has it been what you expected if you've tried it? Have you been surprised? Have you been disappointed? I'm trying to get like a really honest point of view on all of this. And I'll tell you, like I speak to people and I ask the same question and they're like, it looked really good and then it didn't really work. And I haven't heard many people have been like, it has changed our lives. I think we might get there, but I'm curious what you've tried and what the reaction has been so far.
Yeah, I could speak to two examples of like one where it's like, oh, it's really helped. On the other, where I think we tested it and we've gone back to a different approach. One, I think digital channels, all of, like social media, commerce, all that kind of coming together, the need for content is really blowing up, right? And we have to keep scaling with that. And then also you need to refresh the content much faster than, you would do before. So we're using like AI tools to create content, brainstorm, do research, all of that, I think really is helpful. It also democratizes this to a great extent that I have somebody on my team, not a creator, not a creative team member. Like she's not part of that team, but she's like, oh, I need to create this banner. And I did with ChatGPT and oh, wow, it looks amazing. And, boom, you can deploy it. So optimizations, things like that, they can be done by broader teams versus like everything having to go through that creative funnel and, waiting 5-6 weeks to get the output back, et cetera, et cetera. So there we are finding it very useful. I would say in different forms, like you've got optimization, you've got creation, you've got just pure research and just generating ideas and also deploy.
Yeah, that thought partner, like those, we're really shortening the feedback loops. Like I have a bit of writer's block, like, oh, let's generate some ideas. But the human is still executing on like the final idea.
Absolutely. So that's where I feel like the utility is still there. Utility is very much there. Actually, I shouldn't say still there. That's something we've embraced. Now, as far as connecting with the human beings is concerned, like customers, AI chatbots, I think beyond the basic, where is my
package
or a few questions. I think anything beyond that, I think one, the capability isn't there at least in our experience. And then second, do you really want that? Do you really want to hand over that critical moment of engagement to an AI agent versus, having human beings who can come up with creative options and solutions when needed or build that relationship with the customer? That's where I think it's important to drive a balance and be very...
And perhaps when the relationship is in a fragile place too. I think that's what we maybe we're already on thin ice, and how much risk are we willing to take? But now maybe we can give content tools to agents to be able to get them to come up with like really creative answers faster, better, but I still want that human in the loop.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's a really interesting perspective, and maybe a time saver or a cost saver or a brand saver for people who are listening. Who are like, I'm being told that I should replace my entire CX team with chatbots, and why haven't I done it yet? So hearing it from someone who's had a chance to look at it at a brand like Belkin, I think is super helpful. Jyoti, this has been amazing. I want to keep chatting. There's so many questions I didn't get to about your technology stack and how you're thinking about data. But I'm going to have to invite you back because I have absolutely run us out of time. But a real pleasure. And thank you so much for sharing your knowledge. And I'd love to have you back on a future episode.
Absolutely happy to. And it's been really fun chatting. Thank you for the wonderful questions and the conversation.